Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Amasid and today we are again discussing Endless Delve. The event just finished. Today is Saturday, December 19th. So the event finished up yesterday afternoon. And I thought we'd do a quick discussion on sort of like a post-mortem discussion on things that I thought went well. I've gathered community feedback a little bit off Reddit to sort of inform my own opinion, but just to sort of see where we're at and see what we think can go core, what makes sense, what worked, what didn't, what I think should be done next time differently, etc. So I guess the first discussion that I wanted to go over is some things that I saw again online that I agreed with, some things that I thought should be included in the discussion. The first one being, should this be a core experience? I think yes. I mentioned this in the last video. I frankly think that this should be somehow incorporated. In its current state, obviously, it doesn't make any sense. It's like you wouldn't want to just simply put an endless delve in, and I'll get into that in a little bit detail because some people have mentioned sort of the idea of playing the way you want to play in Path of Exile without any kind of resource limitation, as in should delve have not have a soul fight requirement, and I think that that's tricky, but we'll get into that in a second. But in terms of making this core, I think there's a lot of ways to do this. Putting this in terms of a leveling experience, making it essentially, once you can level up through this, and once you hit a certain level, maybe level 70 or something, which is generally, I guess, when people finish the story, roughly between 60 and 70, then it starts requiring soul fight or something like that. I think that there's a lot of ways to do this, but if they were to incorporate this alt leveling experience, I think that's one potential route. Another interesting idea that I saw was skill gems at level 1. I think that would be extremely nice. Again, maybe not as a first playthrough sort of thing where you're just inundated with, 100 skill gems or whatever it is. But once you level up once through the story, you maybe should have access to all skill gems at level 1. Frankly, it just saves time because if I'm making an alt character and I already have a build in mind for sure, then I'm already going to go on my main character, buy the gems, and put them in my tab and sort of line it up and make sure I'm set to go on that character. So it really doesn't make sense that they should be inaccessible. I think that's a great idea. In terms of skill gems at level 1, there's again ways to do it. In the way they did it in Delve, I thought was really great. They had Lily Roth sitting in the Azurite mine, ready to sell you gems, and you just couldn't use them for certain levels. Level requirements didn't change. I thought that was perfectly reasonable, very easy thing to implement. In terms of the content gating thing that I was alluding to before, so I personally think that while I would love to be able to have the option to just run Delve all day and not have the soul fight requirement, the biggest thing to me, the issue that this poses, is that it's going to completely change the way that loot has to be balanced in something like Delve or any other things that require some kind of material. So like I'm thinking if you were to run continuous Alva temples or something, you'd have to completely rebalance the temple in the same way that if you had endless Delve where you can just run Delve as much as you want with no soul fight requirement, then you really are kind of opening up the gateway to having that DGG have to really rebalance all the way the loot works in the entire game. Fossils have to be completely changed. Crafting might even have to be changed. I personally think that it makes sense to have it gated behind some kind of crafting, or not crafting material, but some kind of collective material. I am not opposed to this staying the way this is. I can understand people. Again, I would love to just run Delve all day long. I had a lot of fun with this event, but from GGG's perspective, I think that it's probably more trouble than it's worth to make this a forever experience in terms of no entrance fee, so to speak. So while I can understand both sides of that argument, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion, I'm skeptical just because of the greater picture. But again, like I said, I would love to be able to run Delve infinitely, so I kind of go on both sides. But at the end of the day, I don't think it makes sense. Another interesting thing I saw online was Endless Delve was a private league setting. I think that frankly, I don't see a huge issue with that. The only thing I could see the problem is that it detracts from the league. In terms of GGG, they make a lot of money on the leagues. That's how they sustain themselves. It's a free game. They kind of rely on leagues to do that. So if people were doing Endless Delve leagues, I think it makes sense, but maybe only for, they only enable it for a certain amount of time. So maybe like the second half of a league or, the last month of a league, you can do a private league Delve event. I think that might make sense, but as a whole league long option, maybe not. But I think that is an interesting idea and maybe something worth GGG looking into. One thing I wanted to point to is that I really hope that GGG doesn't point to the the delve event retention and say people don't actually want this. You thought you did, but you didn't, kind of like a classic WoW scenario. Just because this obviously is a 1 week event, there's a lot of different restrictions on this. It's not really exactly the way I would, I think, in an ideal world, implement an endless delve event. I understand that they were under a time and resource crunch in terms of delaying 3.13 and all that, and sort of coming up with this idea on the spot to some degree. They kind of had to like work quickly. So I understand that this isn't probably necessarily exactly how they wanted either, but on the same note, I hope they don't point to this endless delve retention and say, okay, you didn't actually want this thing. It's not really as good as you thought it was going to be. Most people only played for 2 days. I think that, again, if this was implemented in terms of in core, the real benefit to this would be sort of a power leveling, alt leveling experience. I think that's really where the meat of this potential is. So I'm hoping that they look at that and say, okay, people leveled up to 75, 80, which is really all I think this really should be meant to do, is that you can just do this alt leveling experience, and then they kind of started to fade off. I think that for me that's within the parameters of being a successful event in terms of how could we implement this into the game? What did we learn from this? So the other thing, I was alluding to this earlier just now, but how I would do this differently. So if they were to run the event again, let's say they didn't implement any of this as core information, they just simply ran the event again. I'd like it at least a week longer. I mentioned this in the last video. I think 2 weeks at minimum is a reasonable expectation, just because, again, let's say I was unable to play this week, then it's not really fair that I should be penalized for a 1 week event. Mayhem, I less feel this way, just because Mayhem has happened before, and this delve has only happened once, and I thought it was a little bit tough if you weren't able to play for this 1 week. I certainly would have loved another week to explore. I got to about level 75 again. I wasn't planning to run this through and through into deep delve. That was never my plan, but I just wanted to explore it, see how it felt, run it with an SSF experience, which I'd never done before. I think that having another week would be very helpful for people, including myself, who frankly wanted more time. And then the other thing that I would add in there is that adding a crafting bench, my understanding was that this was just a technical limitation in terms of implementing the event quickly and successfully. So getting a crafting bench in there would obviously be fantastic. I think that there were so many good items dropping, because this was like even a deeper SSF experience than a normal one, where you couldn't craft, you really didn't have access to most traders. It was kind of tricky. So the crafting bench option would be fantastic, but within that, I personally love trading in the game. So if this were to be for a 1 week event, I can understand no trading, just because it's just so tricky to do any kind of trading in that short amount of time. You log, the prices will be all over the place anyway. I just don't think it's worth it. So I can understand doing SSF completely for that. But if they were to run this again, and for a longer period of time, I would prefer that it would have a trading option as well, just because running to level 75 SSF was fun for me, but after that I was kind of looking to buy some items. I had some currency. I was spending my currency as quickly as I was getting it, but if I had the option knowing that I could buy a pair of 30% movement speed boots, or cap my cold res easier, which was an issue for me, and I certainly would. So I think that if they were to do this again, a trading option would be nice. So anyway, those are my sort of final thoughts on Endless Delve. I would love to hear what you guys thought on the whole experience, get your opinions, your comments, etc. Thank you all for watching. I have some more gambling type videos coming up in the next couple days, so keep your eyes and ears open. Hit that bell, subscribe, like, do all that, etc., etc. And I'll catch you in the next one.